What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle. In today's video is going to be analyzing Jestal. This is the nickname for Jester and Vestal as a pairing. This is something a lot of new players flock to, and some veteran players still use it, but they usually kind of mock it too, so I want to make a video discussing it just because I think it might be fun to do. But anyway, before we get started, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Make sure to check out the description box for Discord, Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and the VOD channel, and any other link that I forgot to mention in this little segment. The idea is pretty obvious. For Jester and Vestal, we call this Jestal. And what do these teams look like? Obviously, the two of them will occupy your backline, which limits your team building options if you want to put other people up front. This means that other characters that are traditionally used in the backline, or I should say favored, like Plague Doctor or Arbalest, for instance, or maybe starting a Grave Robber in the back to lunge on turn 1, these things are out of reach if you use Jestal, which means that it has a lot of strengths, but then also a lot of limitations. Which means when you're building a Jestal team, usually you're looking for a couple frontliners, or maybe some kind of mid-range character in rank 2, such as Highwayman, to fill out the rest of the team. A few of the common examples are including Shieldbreaker. Shieldbreaker does a lot to fix many of Jestal's weaknesses where they don't have a lot of rank 4 reach or damage potentially. Shieldbreaker shows up with Pierce that can hit rank 4 and Puncture to pull things up front. So she adds a lot of versatility and effective value to Jestal. So if you want to use a team like this and you have the Shieldbreaker DLC, which is usually like $3, then give this a shot. Other characters that like to be in the Jestal pairing are someone like Hellion. She has a lot of reach, she can do a lot of damage, so she kind of fixes the main Jestal weakness, which we'll talk about in a minute, but one of their weaknesses is damage output. Then we have Shieldbreaker like we talked about, but also someone like Leper greatly appreciates this just because Leper does very well with Jester in his back pocket. Following the style of our class guide series, we'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses and I guess the how to play part of Jestal. The how to play isn't too complicated as you could probably guess, but the strengths of Jestal are the sheer recovery output that this team has. It is the most recovery-oriented pair in the entire game. You can get some pretty strong healing out of Occultist, Flagellant, Arbalest, characters like that, and you can still stress heal with Crusader or Houndmaster, for example. But the two of these characters, so you have Jester, who has the highest single target stress healing output in the game. His crit buff gives him more stress healing, which is pretty cool. Then you have Vestal, who has the most consistent healing output in the entire game. May not necessarily be the best just because their single target heal is okay, but Divine Comfort, which is the group heal, is really good at later levels. It's kind of crappy at the start of the game. It means that while other characters may have potential for higher numbers, like Occultist if he can roll consistently, it's the fact that these two are very consistent with pretty above average output that makes them so effective. Another strength that might seem a bit strange after me just talking about how it limits your team design options, once you understand what those limitations are, this pair is very easy to build around. There are a lot of characters that aren't the backline specific heroes that you can just throw up in front of this pair and they do fine. The reason being, pretty much every character in the game appreciates Battle Ballad and Vestal can stun things to slow the game down. The final strength I will say about Jestal is that they are very easy to play as a duo. Strangely enough, people still misplay them. A lot of people don't open with Battle Ballad with Jester, which you should be doing in the large majority of the fights, if not every single fight that you encounter. And then you have Vestal, who a lot of people just wait for her to need to heal, or like they might heal when someone's just missing 2 HP, and that's it. That's like the only HP missing on the team. And you should be stunning or using Judgment to hit rank 4 with Vestal when she doesn't need to heal. So if you're not sitting there just waiting to use Inspiring Tune or one of the heals, if you're actually being a little bit proactive, such as using Slice Off or Dirk Stab if your team allows it, for example, and then Judgment and Stun with Vestal, then you're doing it right. While we only have a couple strengths in this list here, the first one that I talked about, the recovery output, cannot be understated. This is a duo, I was going to say a team, but this is a duo that if it has enough turns, it can recover from anything in the game. This is why when you go to Endless Harvest, this is one of the common archetypes people tell you to bring if you don't know what to bring. If you ever ask on Reddit or in Discord or on channels like mine, you say, what do I bring to Endless Harvest? The most common answer you're going to get is Jestal and then like Shieldbreaker and someone else. And that's because these two can survive pretty much anything if they can get enough turns to do it. Time to talk about weaknesses with Jestal because there are a few that need to be talked about. And the first one is reminiscent of what I said in the strengths, where I did say the team is easy to build around, but it is very limiting. Jestal does occupy your backline. They need to be specifically in ranks 3 and 4. You really can't get around it, even if you want to run something like a rank 2 Vestal to do something, cheeky with Mace Bash, for instance, it's usually better to just throw these two characters in the back of the party. The only kind of variance you get with running these two is if you want to put Vestal in 3, so that way Jester on turn 1 can use Battle Ballad, then turn 2 he can use Dirk Stab, and then you can do other stuff from there. Or if you just want to leave Jester in 3 and Vestal in 4, this way Jester can spam his bleed damage moves. That's really the only choice you get when you run this pair, unless you want to do something, really crazy that doesn't fit the normal Jestal archetype, which is recovery based. If you want to do something like solo Jester and whatever with Vestal, you can do that too, but I wouldn't call it a true Jestal comp at that point. The second weakness of the Jestal pair is that the two of them together really lack in reach, which means they can't hit rank 4 reliably specifically. Rank 4 is a very important target to hit. It is often the weakest target on the enemy team for, most intents and purposes. There are some exceptions. But between the two of them, the only moves that can hit rank 4 are Judgment and Finale, which means that your front two characters that you put on this team need the reach or some kind of plan to deal with rank 4. Because even though, sure, you can recover through most backline characters that cause a lot of stress and whatnot, you don't want to if you don't have to. You'd rather just end fights quickly, not leave the chance where an enemy just gets a random crit. You just want to end these fights as quick as possible, in most cases, until you need to stall. The final major weakness that we need to talk about with Jestal is the fact that between the two of them, they only have one stun, and that is from Vestal. So even though this team does have a lot of recovery output, it doesn't have a lot of ways to mitigate damage on its own. It can't kill quickly between the two of them, and it doesn't have any other stuns besides Dazzling Light, which means that in most fights, your team is going to be getting hit in the face repeatedly and need to recover. This also means some of the very threatening things out there, like enemies that can disease you, are very hard for Jestal to slow down. The two of them are not the fastest. I mean, Jester's pretty fast, but Vestal's not fast herself. It really needs turn 1 to use Battle Ballad to get going. I was going to have a section in this video called How to Play Jestal, and I even think I talked about it at the start of the video. But honestly, I don't feel like it's that necessary, just because it's a very streamlined process. So anything with Jestal that is complex in terms of how to play the team comes from your frontliners. Jester and Vestal themselves are not that complicated and pretty straightforward. So in case it wasn't obvious when I talked about it before, all you really need to do with this team is to start with Battle Ballad with Jester. That's your big buff that gives you speed and accuracy. That's just so you can go first next turn. And then you can stun something threatening with Vestal that has somewhat low stun resist, probably not some size 2 enemy, for instance. And then after that, it's really just reactive play. Like, this is a very reactive team, just normally. So what you're doing after that really depends on what's happening to you. If you're taking a lot of damage, it's time to start healing. If you're getting stressed out, it's time to start stress healing. If things aren't really hitting you or doing a lot of damage, then use Jester and Vestal with their attacks. So Jester has, his multitude of attacks, and then Vestal has Judgment. So you can do that kind of stuff. The really important things that some people still don't do is you have to start with Ballad, and you probably should be opening with Stun with Vestal. After that, it really depends on the fights. Some final thoughts here with Jestal. It's a team that I don't know how much I used it back when I started playing the game. I probably should go back and check my videos. But I think it's a team that is rightly criticized for a few reasons, and I think it's a little harshly criticized for some others. There are a lot of people out there that just say, oh, it's, for noobs, and like new people only use this team. Like, no one good or veteran status should use this team. That I don't think that's entirely true. There are plenty of fights where Jestal is good. There's a reason that it's one of the most popular farmstead teams, just because even though you really need your frontliners to do work, it is a team, like I said, if it has enough time, it can recover from a lot of things, which makes it good in Endless Harvest. The other is that it's not too difficult to build around. Like, once you have a little bit of experience, obviously, just knowing what frontliners you probably want or have access to. So it's pretty straightforward. It's really chill in a lot of cases, so if you don't want to think really hard about team building, you just put Jestal together and then throw like Hellion up front, and then you're just good to go. And even though sometimes it might be boring or just whatever you want to think about it negatively, it usually doesn't lose in a lot of missions. What I mean is that for most missions and bosses, especially if you're going in blind, this team can probably do it. And that's not something you can say for a lot of other teams. There are very few teams that you can just take to anything in the game and it's going to succeed, just because there's so much going on between resistances and what the enemies can do and all that, and the region itself or the bosses and such. And since there's so much variance, you can really just bring Jestal and like Shield Breaker, and that will get you through the majority of content in the game. It may not be easy for some things, because there are things that I probably should talk about this in my weaknesses section, but Jestal is a comp that needs to stay in place, that way it can work at peak efficiency. So there's some fights and enemies in the game that can really disrupt it, and that can kind of suck. But even then, it always comes back to that thing I talked about at the start of the video, where if this team can get enough turns to stall, if it can get enough free turns to just hang out and start healing, it will recover. Even though it may seem that I'm making a spirited defensive Jestal, I just want to defend the merits of it. I personally don't really like running this duo. I do run it from time to time. Like I said, there are some bosses I break it out for, or just missions in general, but it is certainly not my favorite duo. However, despite all of that, if you enjoy running Jestal, keep doing it. Don't let anyone tell you not to. Don't let anyone in some YouTube comment sections or on a Discord or Reddit tell you that you're bad for running it. Just run it. Who cares? The reason I say that is because it's really no one's business in terms of the internet and such to tell you how to enjoy your single player game. Alright y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed the video with your comments and thumbs up and stuff. Make sure you check out the box below for all the cool links. And if you want other videos like this, I guess in the future, let me know. But I'm not really sure what duos out there are as polarizing as Jestal. It's usually people just love it and some people hate it. But maybe in Darkest Dungeon 2, when that comes out, we can start talking about those types of duos. Speaking of Darkest Dungeon 2, I'm going to be streaming it on my Twitch channel, but I also have an idea. I might stream it on YouTube for the first day, depending on what happens, but that's something I'm still formulating. But if you do want to check out my Twitch channel, make sure to check out the link below, and then also the link for the VOD channel, where outside of Darkest Dungeon videos and playthroughs that I'm doing, I will upload all the other games that I play to that channel in due time. I'm still getting ready to upload some stuff. As for videos coming up next, we're going to do some more torchless VODs from Darkest Dungeon 1. Those are almost done. I think I have 14 left to do, maybe 13 at this point, I can't remember. I'm also going to finish up the viewer runs, and then we're going to do the final version of the tier list this week. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.